Assessment of social impacts based on different data sources in SEEbalance. Welcome to my oral presentation where I want to show you some insights how we measure and implement data in the SEEbalance method. The SEEbalance contains different modules. One of the modules is the eco-efficiency analysis covering lifecycle assessment, lifecycle costing. The other part is the social analysis, and there we have two modules, and I just want to highlight one of these two modules, the social lifecycle assessment. With this methodology, we want to identify social risks based on credible commercial data providers, and I will show you how we can do that and how we can measure social impacts. We want to highlight important impact categories, and we want to consider commonly agreed social impact categories. We want to focus on stakeholder groups like workers, communities, and consumers. In the social lifecycle assessment, we start like in a classical LCA. So we define the system boundaries, we define the different process steps and unit steps. And if we have an overview of all these process steps that are needed to fulfill a specific functional unit, we start addressing the information we have. So stepwise, unit process per unit process, we double check. Do we know the producing companies of this system unit, or do we know it from this process? If we know the company, we go in the database called EcoVadis, which is a commonly available database where a lot of supplier data are in there and independently assessed by the providers of EcoVadis database. Also, the chemical industry with TFS, Together for Sustainability, implemented a lot of data here in this EcoVadis system. If we find the company and we have available data for that, we take them in our consideration. For example, we have here the indicator fair wages. We take out of EcoVadis the working conditions indicator coming from the social dimension. If we don't have an information on the company in EcoVadis, we go the next step and we use the database RepRisk, which is also an open available database, which considers risks in different types of media and displays them in the database. And we cross-check for this company that was identified if there are risks or risks mentioned in this database, and we address them. We use in this database for fair wages the poor employment conditions indicator. In the next process step, if we don't know the company on the left hand, you see we have no information. We ask the next question, do we know the specific country where this process step is performed? If we know that, we go to the right hand and we use the Verisk Maplecroft database. That is also a database which is a sector and country specific database dealing with social risks. And we take out their information, in this case for the fair wages, coming from the decent wages index. So you see it's a coherent system on the fair wages with different types of databases. You can come to the same type of indicators. So you can combine these different approaches. If we don't know a specific country, for instance, if you buy oil from the spot market or so, then you go to statistics and you use import statistics and you say, okay, we take different countries and we mass balance this by the amount of import shares. And then we take also the Verisk Maplecroft indicator to have an aggregated figure in the decent wages index. If we are using the three types of databases, EcoVadis, RepRisk or Maplecroft, we can extract the results for companies, for regions or average regions, and we can generate first results for every process step out of this. So we have a scale from 0 to 10 and we use the scale to put these figures behind these different process steps. You see here process step 1, for instance, there's one company in there We found some information on EcoVadis, for example, and we could give them a score of 7.6, which means it's a green score. So this scale is again also linked with a color code. You see that in the process step 2, there we have a mixture of different companies. And you see what is an overall figure. It's 5.5. It's a yellow scale. And you see also the amounts of different risk classification of companies in these. So you see, for example, that 18% of the companies delivering to this process step are in the red level. And you see also these 3 most difficult companies are listed in this overview. So it's really a transparent overview of different process steps using different types of database. As I showed you before, the data sets and indicators link well together, and you can generate in a good and easy applicable way color codes and good overviews for every process step. This is an overview of the whole system boundary. You see it, you can do it for every step. You can show it with different countries, different companies. You can highlight the risk scores. You can see the spread of the risks, and you see where are the most significant life cycle steps which have a relatively high social risk, and you can focus on them. But the first step is to generate an overview and to label every process step with a social indicator, risk, color, and number behind it. So it's a qualitative approach which ends as well in quantitative numbers. And we have seen that this approach is a much more meaningful approach than just really drill down it to a quantitative approach, which in some cases we have seen is not really a meaningful number. So we take qualitative approaches and use them in this approach based on databases available. The different process steps are aggregated and summarized in different types of figures. This is a figure where you see the different process steps and you see the risk score. So the 0 is the highest risk score and the 10 is the lowest risk score, and you see also the linked colors behind that. And you see for every process step what is the social risk linked with that, and you can distinguish between, for instance, 2 or 3 or more alternatives. You can really compare different alternatives for the same functional unit. For example, you see here the alternative 3 has always the lowest score, so it's really for most of the steps lower than the others. So you can clearly say that is a worse alternative. Then you can say it's followed by the blue one, and the yellow alternative, alternative 2, has most of the lowest figures due to social risks. So you can make a ranking of these alternatives, which you see on the right hand. So rank 1 is alternative 2, followed by 1 and 3. So that is a way how we interpret the results out of the social assessment and make it visible and make it interpretable. Now I come to the summary and conclusion. We developed the social analysis using this methodology for addressing social impacts, risk, and also for the identification of improvement potentials of products or process alternatives. In the social LCA, which is a part of the social analysis, we follow the LCA approach, so we define system boundaries, different process steps and unit steps, and we link them to different social information. So we follow a hierarchy, identifying if we have information on companies or on specific regions or sectors. By using this approach, we link these findings with different information from different databases. So we can use in this hierarchy, in the first instance, EcoVadis, which is focusing clearly on companies and their social assessment. Then we look in the next instance on RepRisk, which has much more companies listed, but on a different level with different information. We have to interpret them. And last but not least, we're using Maplecroft in a sector-specific and country-specific approach. We can extract significant data out of all these information, and we can transform them in color codes and in visible information for every life cycle step. With this information, we can compare every alternative and we come to final conclusions and overview results.